Cornucopia, Wisconsin is the destination for our next episode of Painting and Travel. Sarah learns about the fishing industry on Lake Superior, and Roger sets up his easel and uses acrylics to paint one of the gill net fishing boats from the past.
Well, this is a perfect morning to walk around in the village of Cornucopia, Wisconsin, a very small town built along the Lake Superior shoreline, complete with a few weathered craft stores with handmade items, a sandwich shop, and lots of colorful summer flowers, plus a driftwood archway leading to a boardwalk and marina. Earlier, I noticed a family-owned fishing business, and I don't want to miss an opportunity to learn about it firsthand. I hope to find someone to tell me what goes on in there after they open up. You can see how this cool water and pretty little harbor is so attractive for pleasure boaters as well as fishermen and kayakers. There's a general store, a few restaurants, a camping area, and an inn nearby. And just around the corner you'll find a museum with interesting local history and some retired gill net fishing boats displayed in this casual, pet-friendly park next to the beach. I like being able to walk right up to these unusually shaped boats and imagine them loaded up with their catch, making their way back to port in stormy weather with the crew working hard to get docked safely and then unload the fish, clean everything up, and then prepare to do it again soon. Lots of back-breaking work. Now we're just a hop, skip, and a jump away from the water. It's so pleasant to walk on a sandy path to the beach and find only nature there. No buildings, no cabanas, no pay stations. Just look at that beautiful water.
This is a lovely morning on Lake Superior, and I'm going to paint this gill net fishing boat. I like the composition, and as I moved around, I found that for me that this was the best spot. If I moved over that way slightly, then the tree sort of became separated from the boat. In other words, the boat was sort of one subject and the tree was another subject. But here, these two elements, the boat and the tree, they sort of become one element, and I like that in a painting, to group things together. Earlier I took charcoal, sketched my composition here, and then I went over that with pencil. The charcoal is not going to bother me at all as I paint. It's important for me to get an accurate sketch, and that will save a lot of time in the long run. Now there's several ways to approach this. I could put the sky in first and then the tree, or I could put the tree in first and then the sky and paint the negative areas of the sky within that tree. I go back and forth with this. Generally, I like to paint the negative areas, but in this case today, I think I'm going to paint the sky first. It's a very light blue sky, so I'm using cerulean blue and a touch of ultramarine blue, and I'm going to pick up my yellow ochre just so that doesn't look quite so blue. I want it to look like it's a blue right out of the tube. I am using acrylics today, and this is titanium white, ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, a transparent Indian yellow, cadmium yellow light, alizarin crimson, yellow ochre, and chromium oxide green. There again, the colors I choose are somewhat arbitrary. I mean, often I'll use just 3 colors on my palette, the 3 primary colors. Other times I'll put out more colors. A lot of that really just depends on what I feel like doing during the day. I do often find though that the less colors I put on my palette, the simpler it is to create a painting. I don't get hung up with a lot of unnecessary choices. Maybe I'll just paint this all in with the sky. And since these are acrylics, this is going to dry almost in no time. And then I'll put the trees in there. Just with a lot of big broad strokes, I'll block this in. Now, if I were using oils, this would be a totally different situation. I couldn't block it in like this and then put trees over it, because if I were to put trees over this in oils while this was wet, the green would mix with that light blue and make a chalky mess. But I know these acrylics will dry, and in a matter of a few minutes, I'll be able to put that tree in over a dry sky. My main concern here is to get a good, heavy, thick coat so I don't have to go over and paint it another time. Sometimes that happens with acrylics, that it doesn't cover very well on the first pass, and you have to give it a second coat. That's why I'm trying to use this quite heavy here so I don't have to go over that again. There, I think that's quite opaque. What I do when I paint a background like this, I lay it on heavy, I mix it all around, and with a feather touch, I just smooth it out. I think next I'll paint the hull of the boat, ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. That's going to give it a very warm, dark color right down here at the base. Now I am going to lose some of my lines. This water line in here, it's an important line on the boat, but I'm going to paint right over that, even though I've established it in a drawing. What I want to do is be able to blend these dark colors into some of the lighter blue colors here, and the best way to do that is to blend these wet into wet. So now I'll take the cerulean blue and a touch of ultramarine blue and put the hull of that boat right up here, and as you can see, I've lost that water line, the red water line. I may add another color red later on too, maybe a cadmium red light, to paint that water line. That line right down in here. As soon as I saw this, I like this because there's so much beautiful contrast in this scene. We've got the sky, which is sort of a middle tone color, a middle value, and then we have this bright light and then the very dark. Then we have these three nice elements here of lights, middle tones, and darks. For those of you that would like to use acrylics but haven't had the courage to use them yet, one thing that's possible is you can start a painting in acrylics and you can finish it in oils. I have seldom done that, but occasionally I'll do that. Maybe start a painting outside in acrylics and then finish it in the studio with oils. However, you can't do the opposite. If you start a painting in oils, you cannot put the acrylics over the oils. Touch of white, cerulean blue. I'm going to make this lighter right here at the very top. These boats have always reminded me of wooden shoes. I think this is a popular spot because when I got here this morning, there were a few other people sketching and painting. It's a great subject. Right under the wheelhouse, it's in shadow. A gray color might work good for that. Again, I'm going to lose some of my drawing, but it was important to establish that drawing right off, just to familiarize myself with it. This light blue sky, totally dry already, so now it would be safe to put in those trees. But I don't think I'll do that yet. I'm going to keep working my way down here. Chromium oxide green, some alizarin crimson, give me a dark green color. And I can pick up other colors too, my Indian yellow and blue. I'm looking at the values as much as the color. So the values right here, very dark. Of course, this is sitting down on the ground, so this dark green will run right under the keel of the boat, almost where it's indistinguishable between the stern and the grass. I think if I were to turn this into black and white right now, you wouldn't see much difference between the color of this grass and the bottom of the boat. Well, I guess while I have this green mixed, I'll put in the tree. We have two types of trees back there. One's an evergreen tree, and I don't know what the other one is. Anyway, they just do make a beautiful contrast. I think I'll put in the evergreen tree first, since it's in the background. I am trying to work fast here. I'm trying to hurry because this is in a park area and there are people starting to come in, and one never knows a situation like this when they want to start mowing the lawn or when people want to start parking in front of here. So that's one reason I'm trying to hurry this painting. If I were out here by myself where that didn't matter, I might take a much longer time to complete a painting like this. I really don't have that opportunity. And I'm just kind of giving this a light touch with my brush out here to give this a soft edge. Okay, now we have the tree in front, which is slightly lighter. And it comes around the bow of the boat too, right in here. And that also gives a nice contrast. Use my brush and cut that in right there. It's a very important part of the description of the painting. So some good contrast here will help describe that. The tree in the foreground pretty much hides the evergreen tree in the background. And I'm going to make these go up out of sight here, so I won't see the top of either one of these trees. In the far distance over there, there's another set of trees along the other bank. I'm going to place a few of those in here, make them kind of a light blue color to give them a sense of distance. Cerulean blue and ultramarine blue, that should make a nice color of the water. But you know, as soon as I put that on, I can see it's too much the color of the hull. I need to make it grayer. So I'll put some red in it and some yellow, and that will be Lake Superior back there. I have to have these two colors different because if this shade of blue is the same as this, they would appear to be on the same plane. And I want the water to look like it's behind this and the boat hull in front of it. So this needs to be a little duller in color. Over to the left of this gill netter, there are some gill net boats that have seen better days, seen much better days. And I'm not going to describe those very much. I'm just going to put in a gray color here for now, maybe a shape or two like that, and then with a darker shade, just indicate a few lines here and there. It's not important to describe everything in a painting. Sometimes it's better to leave things out. I don't have to put in every detail. All right, I'm going to move down to the grassy area that's catching light. Chromium oxide green, some yellow ochre. I could use any combination of colors up here to probably get the right look. I like that color, that works fairly well. And I'm going to just scumble this on to give it a textured look. And then up here in the foreground, there is the road. And I think that will also work well in the composition because give it a little bit of perspective to put this road in here that goes out that way. I'm making it close to the same value because I don't want to bring too much attention down into this area. And right along the edge of the road, a few weeds and things where the weeds grow over and spill into the road. Okay, well, we got one of the most important parts of the boat here. It's right up here. It's very white, but I don't want to use pure white on that. So I'm going to start with my titanium white. I'll take ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, and Indian yellow. Those are three primary colors, and I'll make a gray with that. I want this to be a warm color, so I'll add more of the Indian yellow here. Now I have lost my drawing there again. Kind of wish I hadn't, but I did, but it's not much of an issue. I can put that in quite easily because I do have the proportions fairly accurate. Using the very edge of my brush, I'll make this line right down here. And if the line doesn't come out the first time with acrylics, if I'm fast, I can maybe spray it, wipe it off, and give it another shot. I think I went down a little too far on that one. With this smaller pointed brush, I'm going to add the details here in the boat, but I'm also going to add some negative areas here in the sky. And what I'm trying to do here is describe just some of the light coming through those branches. A lot of people have trouble with negative areas in trees, and sometimes I do as well, but main thing I'm trying to describe are the branches and the limbs. So I just don't put these on arbitrarily. I mean, sort of arbitrarily, but I don't want to put too many, and I always want to vary the shape and size of them. Don't want them all the same. In this case, I want this to be fairly solid, so I'll keep these negative areas to a minimum. There, I think that should do it for the negative areas. With a dark color, I'll take my ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson, some Indian yellow, all three of my primary colors. I'll make this dark, cool color here. Let me see, I'll look carefully. I can see just barely where my drawing is. So I can see this is one porthole right here. And I see another one right here, very, very faint. Sarah and I did a program that included one of these gill net fishing boats when we were in South Haven, Michigan. It's quite an interesting boat. We have 2 windows on the side, just with 1 or 2 strokes. Place those in. And then in the front, I have a few more windows. With the warmer color, we have some old wood, a bit deteriorated. It goes along the side, right by this door here. So I'll start right up here. I'm going to spray my board slightly, and that makes this paint flow over the dry paint easy. Now I'll just, with a fine touch, add a few of these details in here. Here we have a door on the side. Well, this lawnmower is kind of moving in on us right now. I'm trying to get this as much as I can done here. And I may have to put a few more touches on this back in the studio. I'm going to take Naphthol Red, put a touch of that on there. Now I want to put this water line right in here. I think I'll add a touch of white to it. I don't think this boat has been used in many, many years. I don't know what other fixtures were at the top. We'll place a few of these lines in here. There's a stack right here. It's kind of a nice feature coming out of the engine room, I presume. With some alizarin crimson and blue, and I'm going to make a few marks where just this boat is not rusty, but you know, water has dripped down and sort of caused little stains here and there. And I like to put these in, even if they're not in what I see. It just gives it some character. I'm going to do the same here, and I'll spray my board and just bring a few lines right down, just like there's some stain running down there. Well, it's really starting to get busy here right now. So I think I'll take this back into the studio after I take a few reference photographs, and we'll finish it there.
I've just purchased some brown sugar whitefish from Courtney Howerson, who's a 4th generation in this business. Now we're standing inside the fishery where they process the fish and they sell them. It's very busy here, but she's going to give me a few minutes to tell me about her career. When did you start?
I started when I was 8 years old. I had to stand on a bucket because I couldn't see out the porthole, so I was very, very small at the time. But yeah, my dad taught me everything.
So you actually went out in a boat on Lake Superior with your dad, who taught you about fishing?
Yep. I started on the boat that's named after me, the Courtney Sue.
I think I saw it out there. They were washing out the bins that they bring the fish in.
The fish boxes, yeah.
What type of fish do you catch out there?
We catch herring, whitefish, lake trout, and some kinds of chubs. Mostly just whitefish, though. That's what season we're in right now. But in the wintertime, we catch herring.
How do you go out in the winter?
We have different boats that are called gill net boats, and they're enclosed, and we have heaters in there, so we stay really, really warm. And they're very reinforced in the front, so we can break the ice by driving backwards and rushing right into them. And then we in that picture right there, we have 2 boats, and one goes forward, breaks the ice, the other one goes forward, and it's just a motion of going back and forth.
So they work together to break the way through the ice, and then they can, is it drop nets?
Yeah, well, it's called setting nets.
Setting nets.
And we use anchors, and for the gill nets, it's like a wall. So the fish swim into the wall and they get gilled, and that's why they're called gilled fish.
Give me a quick rundown on how many relatives you've got working here.
Okay, I have my grandpa and my grandma who started this business, and their parents also fished. We're all related somehow, so.
I had that feeling.
Yeah.
A lot of joking around going on.
Yeah, we definitely have to joke around, otherwise it's way too long of a day. We work all probably 12, 13 hours a day sometimes, so it's just, it's a long day.
Thanks for selling me some fish. I'm going to have it for lunch.
Come back again.
All right. Thanks, Courtney.
Well, now that I'm back in the studio, it's given me some time to reflect on the painting I did out on the field. And it's often hard to finish a painting out on the field because there are so many distractions. And the other thing is that the light changes so often and so frequently, and it's also so bright at times that it's hard to really see what the finished product is until you get back into the studio and have some time to look at it and evaluate it some more. So here are a few things I did to finish this piece. I noticed that the back end of this boat was really where the focus of attention should be. Even though the front of the boat is interesting, more is going on back here than in the front. So I wanted to center my interest around the back end of this ship, around the stern of the ship. And in order to bring more attention to an area, one way to do that is to have more contrast in that particular area. So anything with darks against lights, that will bring attention and focus to that area. So here on the back of the ship, I decided to take some white with maybe a bit of yellow ochre in it just to warm it slightly. And in doing that, it gave more contrast to the color that was on here before. Before it was more of this grayish color. So I just brightened that area, made more contrast between the sky and the back of the ship. And of course, here we've got a lot of contrast between this dark tree here and the side of the boat. And on the stern of this boat, I added some phthalo blue and white to bring that up as well, to make it lighter. Another way to add more attention to an area is to add more detail. So I added the window frames around this window. And here on the front side of this cabin, this was also quite light, so I darkened that. Here again, the difference between the light and the dark would bring some attention to the area, the contrast. So I made the front part of this cabin darker just by using a simple wash with some burnt umber and ultramarine blue. And here again, I added more detail by adding these simple window frames around the windows. Now these trees represent a very large shape, large object in the painting. So I wanted to differentiate between these two trees just slightly. I didn't want to bring them into two real separate trees. I wanted them to be one unit, but I wanted there to be some subtle difference. So I made this tree in the background here slightly cooler. I added some cerulean blue to that to push it in the background. And this tree in the foreground here, I used some lighter greens. So that gave me two different areas of these trees, even though it's subtle. One is in the background, it's cooler, one is in the foreground, which is slightly warmer. While in the field, it's very difficult sometimes to get the line you want with the brush. So back in the studio, it was often a better place to do that. And I turned my painting on edge and repaired this line down here because it was a bit wavy in the original painting out in the field. And what I do is I take my small finger and I use it on my board. Now, I couldn't do this with oil paints if it were still wet, but since these are acrylics, this works very well. Just use my small finger and I run my brush along here to create that nice, smooth, curved line. By placing my finger on the board and running the brush down, it sort of keeps my brush from going back and forth and to make a thinner and thicker line. It gives me a better control over how that line goes down. Next, I worked on the foreground and tried to bring that into focus just a bit more. I don't want that to fight with the main area of the boat, but I do want it to come forward. So I added more contrast here in the foreground and made some of these areas lighter and added this path here around the bow of the boat so it sort of brings your eye around in that area. Adding character to any subject like this is important. So I took some burnt sienna, maybe a bit of burnt umber, just with a wash and a larger brush, And I added some more character to this boat by adding some of these rusty looking areas. And that's really accomplished very easily with a thin wash. Now right down here where the boat sits onto the ground, I wanted that boat to really feel like it was part of the ground. So that's why these areas down here are basically the same value. They change color slightly, but there's a lot of reflection also going on between the hull of this boat that bounces onto the grass. So the light hitting this blue hull influences the color of this grass. Also, the grass, being green, will bounce up and influence the blue on the hull of the boat. So it goes back and forth. And when it does that, those two areas sort of melt together and make a very soft color down in there. I did add a slightly lighter shade of blue right down here where the backbone of the boat is. So we don't quite get an area that is totally indistinguishable, but almost. Now it really feels like it's sitting on the ground. Now there always has to be something that holds these boats up, and I'm always amazed by how little it takes to hold these boats in an upright position. I go to boat yards often, and it looks like these boats are actually going to fall over, but they're held up by a few boards or a few things like that. In this case, the boards were wider, holding the boat in place. But I painted them wider, and they just looked too bulky. They looked a little out of place. So I made them thinner, and I placed one in the front here, one in the back, and I placed one right here on the front of the boat, so it was evident that this boat was being held up on both sides. Now this is a standard size board. It's 9 by 12 inches, and often if I have a ready-made frame to place on a painting like this, it will give me an indication whether the painting is really finished or not, because painting never is really finished until there's a frame on it. So I've done that in the course of painting this here in the studio. I've put a frame on it occasionally and taken it off. That way I can see whether I need to do a little more work on it. So I think this painting is finished here. I guess I'll sign it now and we'll put that frame on it.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.